Welcome to today's battle report. Today we are playing bolt action Japanese versus Chinese, and the Japanese are attacking. It's around about late 1930s, and as you can see, the Japanese naval landing forces are just about to touch down. The Japanese also have a submarine in the harbour which arrived earlier. Got 3 Japanese aircraft, a Ki-27 and 2 Val dive bombers. And here we have the Chinese. The Chinese are occupying the town, quite well dug in. They've got a few defences, but nothing really strong to fight against the Japanese with. Got a nice bunker with some troops inside. A British-built light amphibious tank. And over at the back, you can see the Chinese have a small Russian biplane in Chinese colours, which is going to try and take on the Japanese Air Force, so that'll be fun. And the Chinese have right at the back a armoured car with a small pillbox covering the rear. So that is the deployment, and we will see how it plays. End of turn 2. Japanese forces have overflown the battlefield. Unfortunately, they haven't actually managed to observe anything on the ground. So they're not really much use at the moment. However, they have come under anti-aircraft fire from the buildings, some light machine guns in the buildings, which also hasn't done anything, but at least the aircrew now know they are Chinese shooting at them in the town, or overzealous Japanese, take your pick. Over on this side, the Japanese have built a triangle with the dice, which is very interesting, and the actual Japanese ships are slowly moving in towards shore, and the Chinese planes coming out to drop some bombs on them. The naval landing forces, however, have secured a beachhead, so to speak, on the dock, and they've got troops set up with machine guns and anti-tank rifles facing the Japanese truck forces. So they're in a pretty good position. Unfortunately, as you can see, the Chinese are more than ready for them. That's the end of turn 2. One of the Val dive bombers has made an attack against the British-built light amphibious tank and basically pinned it, done quite a bit of damage to it, but it's still operational. So that's unfortunate for the landing party, who are still off the coast, having not received any orders to actually land yet. The Japanese commander appears to be planning on softening the enemy up after he's finally found them all and dropped bombs on them. They do still have a Val operational with its full payload, and the other Val is leaving the battlefield, so he's on his way out. In other news, the naval landing party on the Submarine have decided to make a charge against the Japanese-held building, and the Chinese have brought out a light tank to tackle the Japanese infantry, which should be hilarious when it gets going. Japanese troops have come out of the landing craft and charged up the beach. They've successfully taken out a Chinese tank with an anti-tank charge, and they have completely failed to take out the bunker. They've thrown a few grenades, fired a few bullets, but the bunker's still intact and spraying them with rifle fire. The building is also supporting what is left of the tank down there, and they're laying down some fire. And over on the beach landing area, the tank appears to be running amok against the Japanese infantry, who are completely incapable of taking it out. It's going 50-50 so far. The Japanese don't appear to be making any real headway into the attack. However, they do actually have boots on the ground now, which is a bonus from the last round. What you can see before you is the last survivors of the Chinese army. They're currently still holding the big building. There's a few troops supporting them, but in general terms the rest of the Chinese army is generally running away in that direction. The Japanese planes come over and bombed one of the buildings, taking out most of a Chinese platoon, and the Japanese infantry have seized control of one of the houses. Despite that, the Chinese still have an armoured car on the rampage, which has just begun to move down the battlefield, while the other guys are withdrawing. Over at the beach, the troops that came out of the submarine are still more or less pinned down by the annoying Chinese in this building here. They've spent the entire game, even though they were the first Japanese on the table, they've spent the entire game sat basically trying to hold that little position there, which is a bit embarrassing really. However, the guys who landed on the beach have done particularly well. They've just secured a complete surrender from the Chinese troops inside the bunker, and they've taken out the tank. In the meantime, if I don't knock too many things over, you can see the Japanese coming in the rear side of the buildings, and they're about to engage that armoured car there. The Chinese plane decided it wasn't going to do anything interesting this game, and it's just been flying in circles, just watching the battle for fun really, not really wanting to take part. And the Japanese planes, however, have been very active, dropping bombs and strafing. So that ends this round, and we will see what happens next round, but it doesn't look good for the Chinese. Japanese troops have advanced right to the corner of the building, but Chinese fires kept the Japanese out. So once again, the naval landing party from the submarine has completely failed to make any actual headway, but they have moved across the road, which is a big bonus. They've moved their drinks cabinet slightly closer to the Chinese forces. On the flip side, it's been a pretty good turn for the Chinese because they managed to shoot down one of the Japanese dive bombers, which was a pretty good set of rolling on behalf of the Chinese, even though I do say so myself, although I'm not playing Chinese, so I shouldn't. The Chinese are still holding the buildings at the far side, however the Japanese have occupied that building there, and they have managed to rally their troops, although they are under constant fire from the armoured car parked up next to them with no wheels. In other news, as you can see here, the Ki-27 has managed to get behind the Russian-built Chinese aircraft, the IL-15, is it? PO-15, it's a PO-15, and strafe the hell out of its rear. As you can see, it's on fire. It's only taken minor damage though. The Japanese have secured the bunker on the beachhead, and I would now say that the Japanese firmly have a foothold on at least the right hand side of the battlefield. So there we end this turn, and it really doesn't look good for the Chinese at this point. The Chinese are doing particularly badly, although they did manage to shoot down a Japanese plane, which is always something you look for in a game. The Japanese troops have finally gained entry to the, well, let's call it a hotel, shall we? Yeah, the hotel. They did spend quite a long time sat on the pavement, although they did also manage to take out an armoured car which attempted to sweep them away. But they have stormed the building and managed to take it over, and the last Chinese survivors are doing a runner at the back. However, on the good side of the Chinese, they managed to shoot down another Japanese plane. That's pretty good going actually. I didn't realise how heavily armed up the rather rubbishy Russian biplane is. It's pretty well armed, and it really did make mincemeat of that Japanese plane, given that the Japanese don't tend to put armour in their planes. That leaves the Chinese holding basically one building, and that's about it. The Japanese basically have them surrounded, more or less. Although they now have air superiority, I'm not sure how much good it's going to do them. So let's see how the last bit plays out. The Japanese have launched an attack out of the hotel into the Chinese-held building at the rear of the town, and the Chinese have taken quite a few casualties, although they passed their morale and they're holding out even though there's only a few of them left. The Japanese over here are still slowly advancing towards the town, although they're not putting too much effort into it because they just shot down a Chinese plane. And with the burning wreckage of Japanese air supremacy, it's not really boded well for the Japanese forces, although they do outnumber the Chinese quite a lot by now. The Chinese have taken extreme heavy casualties, and a lot of the Chinese are already leaving town. They're on their way out. So really it's down to this last group of Chinese and the Chinese anti-tank gun, just positioned there, to hold what is left of the town. It really is not looking good for the Chinese now. I think they're on their last legs. Well, the game is finally over. it has been a Japanese victory, although it's been a hard-won battle. Those last couple of rounds caused the most damage to the Japanese, especially the field gun that you can see just here, which did some serious damage to the Japanese. Also, Japanese used naval gunfire to support their attack, and just this round it killed more Japanese than it did Chinese. In fact, it didn't kill any Chinese, it just killed Japanese. So, naval gunfire, bad thing, don't use it. Use someone else's naval gunfire, it's safer. Yeah, so the second Japanese unit has decided to leave the battlefield because it's scary. They're going to go back on their landing craft and complain to someone that, you know, it was dangerous on this battlefield. Yeah, overall, it was quite fun. It was an interesting thing using the new scenery we've got, and it was a lot of fun using the new submarine. So it was a fun little battle to have. I apologise for not having my new scenery done, but I have other stuff to do other than making wargaming stuff all the time. And I hope you enjoyed watching the battle as much as we enjoyed playing it. I did expect the aircraft to be slightly more fun, although all they managed to do is get themselves shot down mostly. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Just click like and subscribe if you want to see more. And this has been Vespasian, and it's also been the Japanese player.
Hey!
And the Chinese player. And that's us. Goodbye.